Welcome back, everyone, to the second edition of the Auburn Anonymous podcast. Here I am, Miles Espy, with my co-host, Mr. Michael Espy. Michael, how you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good. We had a pretty good week of Auburn football. We finally won a game. Auburn basketball won a game, and Alabama basketball lost. So certainly can't complain.
Yeah, definitely. It was all we could really ask for. Auburn just completely dominated in a huge win against Louisiana Monroe, dominated against Kent State in basketball for most of the game. And, of course, Alabama, the number one team in the country. They made the Final Four last year. They're going all the way again this year. Oh, wait, they can't beat Purdue. Oh, that's embarrassing. Oh, and let's also remember they can only barely beat Arkansas State in the East, and then then they lose to Purdue. But they're the number one team in the country. Let's remember that.
I was gonna say I'll give it to them. I mean, they did the same kind of thing last year. They lost all these road games against top 25 teams, and it did end up at the end they made the Final Four and it worked out for them. And so I feel like they can have a pretty positive mindset about that. But the way some of these commentators and college basketball experts were talking about Alabama before the season, they were making it seem like this was going to be one of the best college basketball teams of all time, and I think it exposed a few different holes they have on that roster right now. I still believe Mark Sears is probably the best point guard in college basketball, but I was told they have a way better front court than Auburn, and that seems like it's the complete opposite of true. We might have Auburn might have the...
And Tahad Pettiford would like to have a word with you on that one.
Yeah.
Tahad Pettiford would like to have a word with you on that, on Mark Sears being better. Let's see what happens when they play. I'll tell you what, that was a great, a great thing to watch. Again, I think Alabama, and we'll dive more into it later. I think they have a good basketball team, but they're certainly not a great one. But before we get into that, Michael, you gave 3 predictions on this last podcast about recruiting, about what different recruits are going to do, and I noticed that several people, when we clipped that and put it on X, formerly known as Twitter, a lot of people were bookmarking it. I'm assuming to congratulate you after you got them all right.
Yeah,
I assume that's what it was, but I'd like to follow up with you. How did those predictions go for you?
Yeah, it was a 3-for-3 sweep. First, we got the point guard, top 50 ranked, top 10 ranked point guard out of Charlotte, North Carolina, Caden Magwood. Plays currently for Overtime Elite in Atlanta, Georgia. It reminds me a lot of the way Tahad Pettiford plays. Kind of a Tahad Pettiford, Jared Harper, a typical Bruce Pearl type guard. Huge pickup. I believe he's 6'1". I'm not sure there's a player in his class that's ranked above him that is shorter than him. So you put 4 or 5 more inches on that guy, easy 5-star. Then we got Shamar Arnaud, the cornerback flip. That was my second prediction from USC. Got to think the decommitment from Dante Core had something to do with that happening so quick. Losing him to Ole Miss was a lower 3-star ranked guy, and replaced him with Shamar Arnaud, who's ranked as high as 122 overall on Rivals. He's a 3-star on most other sites, I believe, but ranked higher than the guy we lost, who played the same position, so we can call that an upgrade. And lastly, yesterday we picked up a commitment from Sebastian Williams-Adams. Visited us for the Auburn. He is from Texas and visited us when Auburn played at Houston, and liked what he saw. A lot of basketball players are signing right now, and that game happened at the right time. And another top 40 player in the nation. Huge pickup, very athletic. Will probably play the 4 for us. And I know Auburn's at least going to take one more high school guy, maybe 2, one relatively soon. But it'll be interesting to see how we navigate this portal era, and potentially losing every single player on this roster next year.
Yeah, and you saying all that just reminds me, thank God, for a multitude of reasons, we have both Hugh Freeze and Bruce Pearl. Both of those guys, Hugh Freeze is the best recruiter in Auburn football history, and Bruce Pearl's the best recruiter in Auburn basketball history. And thank God we have them both at the same time. And right now, because recruiting right now more important than ever, with the transfer portal being it's as easy as ever to transfer from college to college now. So just thank God we have the 2 best recruiters in Auburn history running our 2 biggest programs. But let's move on to what Auburn did this past weekend to Louisiana Monroe. I mean, just a complete and utter domination. We've been looking for this huge win, and we finally got it. Was this what you were expecting to happen, Michael, or were you caught a little off guard? Because I heard some people saying we were on upset alert to Louisiana Monroe.
Yeah.
All those people are quiet now.
Yeah, I mean, I was a little worried about it maybe about a month ago when we were losing some of these games, but the fact that Louisiana Monroe lost 3 straight Sun Belt games coming into this game, I didn't really think they had a chance with us, and I love the way Hugh Freeze called the game. A lot of people were mad about Payton Thorne being the starting quarterback. I wasn't very sure about it. After watching Walker White, I mean, he didn't look horrible, but didn't seem like he was ready for the moment quite yet. Just not sure any of these quarterbacks have the same capabilities of Payton Thorne. Would love to see Hank Brown get another chance. I know Hugh Freeze said in his press conference that the reason Walker White came in there over Hank Brown didn't have to do with the fact that Walker White jumped him on the depth chart. It had the fact that he had never played Walker White in a game and wanted to see what he could do. Cam Coleman, 3 touchdowns. Been waiting to see that all season. Need to get him more involved in these last 2 regular season games before our bowl game. Same with Malcolm Simmons. Would love to see him get some more touches. I can tell they're trying to get the ball to Perry Thompson, whether it's the quarterback who's in. I don't know if they believe in him as much, but Perry Thompson will be there. He's the future of this program if he sticks around. But overall, was excited about. And one more thing, the freshmen on defense, they look great as well. DeMarcus Riddick, he's going to be a problem for every scrambling quarterback that plays against Auburn. The way I've never seen anything like it. The way we have a guy who can just completely, you put him at the QB spy, and there's not a quarterback who can outrun him. He's going to play a huge factor in these last 2 games. The Marcel Reed and Jalen Milroe at quarterbacks, they're not going to be able to just run all over the place having him as a spy.
Yeah, and that was something I was going to add. That was the biggest thing for me is we didn't beat these guys with our seniors. We beat these guys with our freshmen. Mm-hmm. But they were the ones making the big play. Cam Coleman, I know you've heard it. Everyone's heard it. 3 touchdowns, over 100 yards. Malcolm Simmons, I don't have the stats pulled up, but he had like I think 6 catches, maybe near 100 yards. I'm not sure. I don't think he quite had it, but still a huge day for Malcolm Simmons, targeting Perry Thompson. And on the defensive side, people like Caleb Harris, DeMarcus Riddick, looked phenomenal. I mean, they were the ones who carried the day for us against Louisiana Monroe, who's one of the better Sun Belt teams this year. So, it's people might laugh at it and say it's just Louisiana Monroe, but our boys stepped it up and they played a really good game against a solid team. And now we're looking ahead and we see the Texas A&M Aggies, and I'm just going to say it. Some people might beat around the bush, Michael, and I don't know how you feel. I haven't asked you for your opinion on this, and I'll ask it in a second here, but a lot of people are, might beat around the bush and say, wow, Auburn, they're playing sneaky good. Maybe they can hang around in a night game in Jordan-Hare, and maybe they could keep it close. Maybe they can sneak out a win against Texas A&M. Look at me right now. The Auburn Tigers are beating the Texas A&M Aggies, and that's a guarantee. Yeah. Okay? We are beating the Texas A&M Aggies. We're the better team right now. If you look at what they've done on offense passing, my cat agrees with me so much that he jumped up here with me. If you look at the passing offense, Payton Thorne has 500 more yards than the Texas A&M passing attacks had all year, and that's between 2 quarterbacks with Connor Wiegman and Marcel Reed, who we'll be seeing Marcel Reed this Saturday. Running backs, they have 2 very good running backs, and they have a solid running game, but we have the best running back in the country in Jarquez Hunter. And then look at the defense. Texas A&M has a fine defense, I guess. They gave up 20 points to Bowling Green. They gave up like 24, 25 to Mississippi State. We're going to score points on these guys. And I'll tell you what, the way our defense has been playing lately, they better be awfully scared coming to Jordan-Hare Stadium at night, because I don't know how many night games we've had this year. So they better be scared, because we're going to be packing that stadium. We want to be a bowl team this year. And Step 1 of becoming a bowl team was beating Louisiana Monroe this past week. Step 2 is beating Texas A&M this week. So we're excited to get it. We're excited to get this win, and I'll tell you what, we're going to win this weekend. So, Michael, I guess first off, do you agree with that take that I have? Because I wholeheartedly believe it, and with that, I guess with that as well, any other big games this week that you see, that any big upsets you see happening?
Yeah, my prediction is Auburn does win this game. I definitely don't think it's a lock by any means. Um, I I think Hugh Freeze is. I could be wrong. I believe he's undefeated at games that start after 6 o'clock at Auburn. Um, just Jordan Hare at night. I'm banking on the atmosphere for this one to get us through. Payton Thorne, his stats are pretty. He's been stat packed this year, to say the least. He has 18 touchdown passes, 9 of them coming from Alabama A&M, and this past week versus Louisiana Monroe, and then 3. If you take the Oklahoma game, that's another 3. Besides that, if you take away the Oklahoma game, you take away the Alabama A&M, and you take away the ULM Monroe game, he's looking at 6 touchdowns and 6 interceptions this season. Which Peyton Thorne are we going to get? I mean, versus SEC teams, he hasn't looked too great this year. He did do pretty good in Oklahoma up until the interception. I don't think we're going to win this game because of Peyton Thorne. If we do win this game, it's going to be because of our defense. I'm not too confident in Texas A&M's offense to move it up and down the field versus us. Marcel Reed has looked okay. I mean, he's a running quarterback. I believe we'll be able to shut him down with DeMarcus Riddick, the QB spy. But certainly something to watch out for.
And what other upsets do you see happening this weekend?
Oklahoma is going to be Alabama this weekend. And I'm so confident that Oklahoma will be Alabama this week. Keep in mind, it's at Oklahoma. Oklahoma's receivers are starting to get a little bit more healthy. As you know, when they played Auburn, they had 5 receivers out, and they've been out for most of the year. They're starting to get some of those guys back. Alabama has looked really inconsistent this year. They beat LSU. LSU just lost to Florida this past week. That was supposed to be their signature. I mean, they beat Georgia at home, but the second half, that was one of the worst second halves I've seen in college football this year. Just not consistent. Really haven't been consistent through a whole game except for the LSU game. Lost at Vanderbilt. I mean, it does depend on what type of Alabama we're going to get this weekend. But mark my words, Alabama is going to lose at Oklahoma this week. And if they do, if Alabama wins, I'll say this right now, I'm going to delete my Twitter. PaytonThorneAA will be deleted if Alabama beats Oklahoma.
Wow. You would make a lot of people really happy. You'd make a lot of people really happy if your Twitter got deleted. You have a lot of haters and trolls out there. But you have some very big fans. I'd hate to see it happen.
Yeah. Oklahoma is going to win. I guarantee you.
Okay. Well, we'll stick by it. I think it'll certainly be a close game. I think a few that I kind of have on the radar, and none of these are huge upsets, but here's kind of what I'm thinking. I'm thinking that the Kansas Jayhawks, who have been on a bit of a heater lately, winning some games they shouldn't win. They beat Iowa State, then they beat BYU, and then this weekend they're going to beat the Colorado Buffaloes.
Where's that game at?
Everyone who's talking about it's in Kansas.
Okay.
And so, Colorado, I've been hearing from people, they're kind of an outsider to win the Big 12 and make it to the college football playoff. Please. And also, if they were like that 4 seed and got 5 seed Ohio State or Oregon, you name it, in the second round, that would be unfair. So, they're going to lose to Kansas this week. Another one I'm not quite as confident on, but I think Ole Miss is in for a tough time heading into the swamp. I mean, Florida, you just alluded to it, beat LSU. And as everyone knows, it's just not easy. It doesn't matter how good or bad Florida is. It's hard to go into the swamp and win. Mm-hmm. And Ole Miss has been erratic this year. They've had some games like this past week where they just dominated against Georgia, and then they've had times where they lost to Kentucky.
It certainly helps Ole Miss that they're going into an 11 o'clock game as opposed to going in for a night game.
Yeah, it does. It certainly does. And again, I think Ole Miss probably wins that game, but they're definitely on upset alert in my mind. Speaking of Ole Miss, Michael, I saw where you got into a bit of a Twitter spat with former Ole Miss quarterback Bo Wallace. What was that all about?
This goes back to a few months ago. Bo Wallace made some comments about Hugh Freeze. I don't remember exactly what he said, but there were negative comments, and a lot of people think that has to do with Bo Wallace wanted the quarterback coaching position here at Auburn, or some type of assistant role, and Hugh Freeze refused to give it to him. those are just the rumors I heard. That could be completely false. But he's continued at it all year. I think he's mostly doing it now just to mess with Auburn fans. And he said something about Deuce Knight flipping to Ole Miss. And I would say there's about a 95% chance, from what I've heard, that he's going to stick with Auburn right now. I would like to say 100, but, I mean, if Ole Miss comes in with some type of massive NIL offer, maybe I'm wrong at the last minute, but I don't see that happening. But yeah, he tweeted at me a couple times about Deuce Knight, and yeah, he clearly cares a lot about an 18-year-old kid, where he's going to end up in college.
Yeah, I remember being at, we went to the Auburn Ole Miss game in 2012, and it was like the battle of the two of the worst teams in the SEC West, and of course, Bo Wallace was the quarterback of one of those two horrible teams, and he was able to beat our slightly more horrible team that year. So, I guess, he's got to try to stay relevant somehow. So I guess he can go on Twitter and, try to make fun of Auburn fans because he's upset that Hugh Freeze wouldn't give him a spot, a coaching spot on Auburn, because we all know that's what he wanted, and he's holding a grudge over it, and that's okay. He's allowed to be upset and troll, but I saw where you were just completely owning him on Twitter, and then he turns around, and the moment you're owning him, he's like, "Well, I don't care. I'm just saying that to mess with you." Well, yeah, you clearly cared because you either care or you're trolling and you're losing. You're losing to AA Payton Thorne, who
he reposted.
PaytonThorneAA doesn't lose.
He specifically reposted a tweet from my buddy Hayes Fawcett. If you don't already follow him on X or Instagram, y'all go ahead and give him a follow. But he reposted Hayes Fawcett. He was saying that something big was happening in 24 hours. Barstool Minty reposted it and said the deuce is loose. Bo Wallace said Deuce Knight, and I had to fact check him that Deuce Knight was coming to Auburn this weekend. The visit went great. He's coming to Auburn again this weekend. He hasn't been to an SEC night home game at Auburn. The atmosphere, whether we're 4-6 or comparing a 4-6 Auburn team to a 8-2 Ole Miss team, the atmosphere at the 4-6 Auburn game is going to be crazier than anything he's ever seen. From what I know, I expect Deuce Knight to put something on social media next week about how he's completely locked in and done taking visits. I don't expect him to go to the Egg Bowl.
Yeah, but that was very kind of Ole Miss to give him a free ticket on the sideline to see an awesome football game against Georgia. That was very kind. Yeah. That was very kind. But again, another thing I just had to address that Bo Wallace said, and that I kind of giggled a little bit. He said at one point, I forget exactly what he was responding to, but he said that Auburn fans should be focused on begging Deuce Knight to come to Auburn. And I was just like thinking to myself, like, really? Like, and then I was like, okay, maybe I need to give him the benefit of the doubt. Remember, he went to Ole Miss. Ole Miss is historically the worst team in what was formerly the SEC West. It was between them and Mississippi State. I thought Mississippi State was typically better. Ole Miss was always the bottom feeder. And they probably did have to beg from everyone to come to Ole Miss. But when it comes to a school of the prestige and, history of the Auburn Tigers, we don't beg for anyone to come to our school. No. And that includes Deuce Knight. If Deuce Knight wants to come to Auburn, great. We'd love to have him. He'd be a great fit in Hugh Freeze's offense. But you know what? If Deuce Knight, if you're listening to me and you don't want to go to Auburn, you think you want to go to Ole Miss, fine. Go be great. We wish you nothing but the best. And I mean that as sincerely as possible. But we'd love to have you. Think you'd be a great fit under Hugh's passing attack. But again, ain't no one begging for Deuce Knight. We'll be fine with or without him. So, as we wrap up talking about college football here, Michael, I'm going to pass it over to you. Last week you were 3 for 3 on college football predictions. You have any college football could be Auburn, could be anyone, predictions for this week?
Yeah. Just looking down off the top of my head, I'll just go down a little bit about each position. Quarterback, obviously, Deuce Knight. Auburn seems to be all in on Deuce Knight. It's going to be either two portal. As I said earlier, we're about a 95% chance of getting him, but it's either going to be two portal QBs if he somehow does flip to Ole Miss, or it's going to be Deuce Knight. We're not going to take another high school quarterback. Deuce night, though, if you're an Auburn fan, I wouldn't worry. Doesn't seem. I don't believe he's going to take another visit to Ole Miss. He's going to be in Auburn again this weekend. That'll make his, I believe, 7th or 8th Auburn game, home game of the year. Running back, I know there was some talk about Usman Krama joining Alvin Henderson. I believe Auburn's kind of backed off there. I think Alvin Henderson will be the lone back we take in the class. Wide receiver, there's one more name we could potentially add. I won't say him right now. But as far as Caleb Cunningham or any big-time receiver goes, they're happy with the guys they have right now. Offensive line, I believe Auburn's still trying to get an Andrew Balboa or a Malachi Goodman. But, I mean, overall, I think we have 6 offensive line committed right now. I don't think it's not going to be the end of the world if they don't get him. No. Here's where things get interesting, would be on the defensive line and the edges. Long-time 5-star commit Jared Smith. He's going to be hard to keep on to here. Ole Miss and South Carolina are pursuing pretty hard right now, and they're putting up NIL offers. I'm not exactly sure the numbers, but if not matched with Auburn's, they're putting up more, and I truly don't believe Auburn's trying to get into a bidding war for Jared Smith. With that being said, I got a prediction. I believe current Miami...
This is what we're waiting for.
I believe current Miami commit, edge rusher, Herbert Scroggins, who was once a huge Auburn target, is going to show up to Auburn this weekend, and he will commit to Auburn, if not on signing day, a week or two before.
Okay, that's exciting. I remember his name being tossed out there in the past, so that would be huge. So you think that'll be a this week thing, or do you think it'll be, you said before signing day, right? A week or two before signing day?
Well, his name hasn't been in the picture too much recently, but he will be in Auburn this weekend for the game. Surprise visitor. Yep. It hasn't been announced that he's going to be in Auburn this weekend, but I'm telling you, Herbert Scroggins will be in Auburn this weekend. I don't think he's going to commit this weekend. We've already flipped one Miami guy, Elijah Melendez, but Herbert Scroggins is a name to watch out for over these next few. Signing day is on December 4th, so he's definitely a name that could pop up after this week. Really any time now. Then as you go down the class, I already have a pick in for Naeem Alford to cornerback, currently committed to Ohio State. I already have a pick in for him to flip to Auburn. It's going to be us, Ohio State, or Oregon. I know we take a visit to Florida this week. I think it was another one of those let me go see a good game type of visits. Don't have anything else to do this week. Don't really believe.
And I can't say I blame him for that.
Yeah, I don't believe he's real serious. At this time, I'd still say Auburn's leading there. It's going to be tough to hold off Oregon and Ohio State, but I can say this: I could almost 100%, or I'll put it at 90% chance he flips, and then I think Auburn's beating Oregon right there. So I got to give it to Auburn right now. The safeties we have,
we're beating them in everything else.
Yeah. The safeties we have right now. Eric Winters is being pursued hard by Georgia, but he seems to be pretty locked in. Linebackers, same. Not worried about losing any of them either.
Okay, well that's good. I had heard rumblings about Jared Smith. I saw him play a game earlier this year at Thompson, and I mean Thompson is a team that's just loaded with talent, but he was a man amongst boys on that defensive side. So I'd love to keep him if we could, but again, if we don't, not the end of the world. We got a really good class coming in. We have really good freshmen in right now. Our defense is going to be dominant with or without Jared Smith. But again, we'd love to have him. So thanks for all that info there, Michael. So now let's move on over to college basketball.
Okay.
This past week, Auburn played one game. Some other SEC teams played games. For the vast majority of those SEC teams won their games. But first, before we dive into anything else, let's dive into Auburn versus Kent State. Looking at that, the way I saw it, it was just dominant. There was maybe a 5 to 10 minute stretch where we were not dominant. The standouts for me, of course, Janai Broom, he always is. Pettiford took a little bit of a step back after his performance against Houston, but that's expected. He's a freshman. It's going to be in ebbs and flows. He's not going to be our best player every game.
Yeah, still played well.
Chaney Johnson was out of this. He did. It wasn't bad. It was just a little step back. And then Chaney Johnson, looked phenomenal. I was watching this game on TV. You were there in person. What did you think? What were your takeaways from the game against a pretty solid MAC team in Kent State?
I honestly didn't think for Auburn standards we played like an amazing game. Not saying we played a bad game. Thought we played a pretty average game. I think the big takeaway for me was Chaney Johnson. Again, proving himself, proving the haters wrong. All year going into this season, I heard Auburn had a huge hole at the 4. People were saying we missed out on McCour for Kansas State. He's not having a great season. People were saying we missed on the Texas transfer. Forget Dylan something. I can't even remember his last name. Chaney Johnson actually
Dylan DeSue.
Yeah. Chaney Johnson actually might be the most improved player in college basketball this year, and I don't think that's a crazy take. Auburn legit might have the best front court in the country. His ability, I mean, he's not a guy who's just going to go...
No, we do.
Yeah. I mean, he's not a guy that, is just going to start draining threes in your face, but if you leave him wide open, he's probably going to make it. And his ability to shoot 3 ball, I mean, he can jump right up there, one of the highest verticals in the SEC. His rebounding, he might even be rebounding more than Janai Broom right now. I believe he's averaging more rebounds per game. I'm sure that won't continue throughout the year, but I mean, he's just got an all-around game, and he's been pretty unstoppable down low.
Yeah, no, it's been very fun to watch this year, and I think the thing, I said last week, kind of had some fun with it, saying Auburn's the best team in the country, and I 100% stand by it. As of right now, we are. And I'll say this, I know Auburn's going to lose some basketball games this year. We are. Every team's going to lose some games. But I think going into it, I think Auburn should win every single game on their schedule. I think they should be the favorite on every single game on their schedule. I mean, you look at what they've done so far through 3 games. They have 6 guys averaging 10 points or more. Janai Broom, Chaney Johnson, Denver Jones, Pettiford, Baker Mazzara, and Miles Kelly. And not included in those 6 players are Ja'Kai Howard, who hopefully we'll have back soon, J.P. Pegues, who's started point guard some games, and he averaged 18, 19 points a game at Furman last year, hit that buzzer beater against Virginia. So he's certainly a scorer. We have Dylan Cardwell, who he's not going to average 10 points a game, but he's a starting caliber center. He'd be starting on pretty much every team in the country right now if they had him on their roster. But he's primarily a rim protector and a rebounder, and he can score if needed. But that's not really his role. So, I mean, we're just stacked right now. And I just, looking into the Maui Invitational, I think we're clean sweeping it. I'll say it. I think we're clean sweeping it as it stands right now.
Yeah, the toughest game might be the first game. There's currently 4 AP top 10 ranked teams in the Maui Invitational right now. We got Auburn, obviously ranked 4. UConn's ranked number 2. Iowa State ranked at 5, and North Carolina, I believe, ranked at number 9. Correct me if I'm wrong. So yeah, in the Maui Invitational, we opened with Iowa State. It's going to be a tough one. I've watched a little bit of them this year. I think Auburn's got the better roster overall, but obviously anything can happen in a basketball game when these guys fly like this over to Hawaii and then just show up ready to play basketball. I mean, really anything can happen, but it's going to be a good experience for the basketball team. We end up getting the winner of North Carolina and Dayton. North Carolina is a very experienced team. I think it's going to be a tough one, but I think as the year progresses, I don't believe North Carolina is going to be a top 10 team personally. Yeah. And then championship.
I'm going to slightly disagree with you there on something. And I'm sorry to cut you off. I thought you were done. But Iowa State, I think we're going to cruise against them in the first game. I mean, we beat a better we beat the best Big 12 team in the country in the first game. In Houston, or not in the first, in our second game of the season, we beat Houston, and they're the best team in the Big 12 by a long shot. And you look at what Iowa State's done this year. They've beaten Mississippi Valley State. They've beaten the University of Kansas City. University of Missouri, Kansas City, excuse me. And they are playing IU Indy tonight, formerly IUPUI. So, I mean, they're not battle-tested. So we're their first real test. and we are battle tested. So I think we have a huge advantage against them. And I'm sorry to cut you off. I thought you were done. So you can go ahead and finish what you were saying.
All I was going to say was just kind of previewing the Maui. You got on the other side of the bracket is you tell me who you think. I mean, Michigan State plays Colorado, and UConn plays Memphis in the first round on the other side. I mean, the easy answer to say UConn makes
the only team that remotely scares me is UConn.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, I think UConn is kind of overrated this year, personally. I could be completely wrong with this take. To be completely honest, I haven't watched one bit of UConn basketball this year. I only say that I know out of their starting five, they only returned Alex Carabin. Lost four NBA players, 4 guys who are now in the NBA. Replaced them with a bunch of freshmen and transfer portal guys. They may end up being pretty good. I just think it's hard to get that roster together so fast and just start winning, going undefeated, winning every game like that. I think Auburn's in the best spot. I think UConn actually is probably in the best spot to win this tournament as far as they got the easier side of the bracket. I think Auburn's the best team in this tournament right now. We'll see as the season progresses, though.
Yeah. For sure. And I think UConn probably is the best team on that side, but I definitely agree we're in the tougher half. But again, I think we're both in agreement that Auburn's going to win this thing. And of course, we're a week away. Depending on how we look against North Alabama tonight, that our opinion may change. But let's talk about how other SEC teams are doing in basketball so far. So this past week, it was for the most part a bunch of cupcakes. A team, I don't know if I said it on the podcast. I think I did, but I may not have. I said I think South Carolina might be the worst team in the SEC this year, where they lost to North Florida. Well, they came back and lost again, this time to Indiana, so give them a little more grace on this one. But I think Indiana's a little overrated personally, and they lost by like maybe 16, 18 points, something like that. So they're not looking great. And then the one that I'm going to let you kick off talking about is the Alabama Crimson Tide lost to the Purdue Boilermakers. What were your thoughts on that?
I will say Purdue surprised me. As you just talked about, South Carolina's loss. My pick to win the Big Ten this year is Indiana. They haven't been too great the past few years, but they obviously have a huge basketball fan base, and they're starting to pour in with NIL. And I'm impressed with this roster they have, and they've looked good in their first few games. But Purdue, I saw that they were preseason ranked in the top 25, or top 15. And I was like, how is that possible? Watching Purdue last year was a Zach Edey show. It was none of these other guys were contributing, but Fletcher Lawyer and Braden Smith and Trace, can't say his last name, Rothman. You know what I'm talking about, the big man.
It's
for
a
Purdue.
double F name.
Yeah. I'm not gonna butcher it, but I remember watching him last year. Didn't really impress me, but he did a great job.
When you're going up against Alabama's defense, it's a lot easier.
And that was the big takeaway from this game. Alabama picked up Cliff Amori this year. Supposed great shot blocker that was going to change the defense completely. And I saw the same Alabama defense I did last year. I saw they had to take him out at the end of the game because he was a liability on offense. And same old, Grant Nelson's at center. And they attack him, and he can't stop them. Alabama's got a lot of problems. Aiden Holloway being a huge one. I mean, you can't just have him in there at the end of the game like that. He's just a liability. Latrell Wrightshell impressed me. I will say that. That's one positive thing I will say. Knockdown shooter. And
Fillion looks really good for them.
Yeah, LeBaron, Fillion. Overall, though, I think Alabama got exposed. And I think they'll beat Illinois this upcoming week. But then they have a big matchup against the Houston Cougars. And I think we'll see a lot of the same things there. I got Houston beating them by 15 plus next week.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I've always said this about Nate Oates. He runs a very gimmicky offense at Alabama. It's very gimmicky, where he says 3-pointers, layups, slashes, dunks, or free throws. That's the only 3 shots we want. Nothing other than that. And that works when you have guys who are great at slashing, and you have guys who can shoot the 3 ball all over the court. So you've seen that in years where Alabama had players like Brandon Miller who was known to be a really good shooter. But in years where they don't have these great shooters all over the court, you see them struggle a little bit. And Cliff, I'm not going to try the last name, that who they got from Rutgers. I think he's a solid player, but I think he's a horrible fit for Nate Oates' system. As mediocre as I think Grant Nelson is, I think they'd be better off running him as the starting center, like they did last year, because he's got kind of a three-point shot. He's a little bit of a three-point threat, whereas Cliff isn't. So when you're able to run that 5-out offense where all 5 players are capable of shooting and making a 3 on the court at once, his system works better. So having Cliff out there is going to hurt their offense, and that's where Alabama makes their money in basketball is offense. They're not a defensive team. I mean, they're, as you said, just completely exposed. So, I want to see more of Cliff playing for Alabama this year. I want to see, absolutely. I want him to wrap up all the minutes. And Nate, if you're listening to this, I think he would absolutely shut down Janai Broome. Play Cliff the entire game against Auburn. I'd love to see it. Run him and Holloway out there at the same time while you're at it. Throw a lot of Aiden Holloway. But, yeah, I don't think Purdue's that good. I mean, I think Purdue's a decent team, but I don't think they're that good. I mean, I guaranteed Auburn would beat Texas A&M this weekend. Well, guess what? I got another prediction another guarantee for you. Auburn's playing Purdue in December 21st, barring a ton of injuries. The Auburn Tigers are beating the Purdue Boilermakers, and it's not going to be particularly close. We're going to win that game pretty comfortably.
Yeah, it's going to be a crazy environment, the game being in Birmingham. Going to be just completely packed full of Auburn fans. I don't see Purdue being up. We're at a huge advantage. What I'm trying to say is we're at a huge advantage with that game being in Birmingham as opposed to Alabama playing at Purdue. But, yeah, it won't be the same. But, I mean, we're going to have a lot of common opponents this year. Alabama's going to play Houston. We're going to see that, how they look against them. They're going to play. Auburn's most likely going to play North Carolina in the Maui Invitational. Alabama plays them for the SEC ACC Challenge. And so, yeah, we'll get a good chance to compare these two teams over the next coming weeks.
Nice. Yeah. We will. Speaking of getting to compare these teams, you saw Auburn play Kent State in person this past week, and you and I will be attending the Alabama-Illinois game tomorrow night. So anyone who wants to join our meet and greet, they're welcome to join us. We'd love to have them come and get an autograph, get a picture with the Auburn Anonymous crew, and more importantly, AA Payton Thorne. Feel free to come by and get a picture with us. We'd love to say hey, and we're going to be cheering on the Illinois to hopefully a big win against this Alabama Crimson Tide basketball team.
Yeah. I'm hoping I'm wrong on that. Illinois has looked a little bit better than expected to start the season so far. So it should be interesting. Alabama should easily take care of them, though. I think.
Okay. So before we end the podcast for this week, Michael, you asked about your football recruiting predictions and predictions all around. Do you have any predictions for this upcoming week for college basketball?
Yeah.
Of course you do. Yeah. You always do.
Yeah. Well, this is a common time of year where a lot of people are signing in college basketball. All 3 of the Auburn commits have all signed right now. And I got another one. I don't necessarily know that this will have happened by the time we film our podcast next week, but this will happen within the next few weeks. Spoke to sources really close to this guy. They're all saying the same thing. Sean Ababe, a 5-star shooting guard, currently with Overtime Elite. He's going to go to Auburn. And I did not think that for a while. Thought some of those other, I know Kentucky was in on him, Kansas was in on him, Alabama was trying hard to get him, Arkansas was trying hard to get him. But Sean Ababe will end up with Auburn. And along with my football prediction, if I'll just go into that, Herbert Scroggins. I think with football, we're going to have to wait till after Saturday. I think a lot of these guys who could, there's only a few more in the class of 2025 who could commit, which would be Naeem Offer, Herbert Scroggins, one of the offensive linemen. Joseph Mbachu, defensive lineman, and there's a Tennessee defensive lineman. I can't think of him off the top of my head that we're kind of looking at as well. But Joseph Mbachu, a name that could pop up this week. Naeem offered. I would wait till signing day for Herbert Scroggins, though. Look for that this weekend.
Okay, wow. We'll definitely, definitely be on the lookout for that. So, I wonder if you'll get as many bookmarks on Twitter as you did this past week, so they can congratulate you after you get your picks right.
Yeah.
But yeah, hopefully. But that's going to do it for the second edition of the Auburn Anonymous podcast. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in, and hope you have a great rest of your day.